with our host, Sherrie Price Clark of Storehouse Media. Sherrie, I know you're excited about our guest today.
I am super excited about our guest, Kevin Laws, because he is a super interesting person. I have a really good friend who's a retired special agent. She kept saying, "You got to get Kevin on your show. You got to get Kevin on your show." So I looked into him. I'm like, I got to get Kevin on my show. So I reached out, and here he is. So Kevin is super interesting in that, okay, he's a retired special agent from Homeland Security Investigations, and he also now he owns he's the owner of KNS Teaching and Consulting, which we'll get into. But such an interesting background as I read into you. But you do something that a lot of people just can't wrap their head around, and that you've done undercover online for 11 years pretending to be somebody else. Tell us how you got into that, and tell us a little bit about that.
Well, that was how I got into it was a massive fluke. So this was many, many years ago. I was in Yuma, Arizona, and my boss comes to me and says, "Hey, Kevin, you want to go to the school?" And he spews out this ridiculously long name. It was actually Basic Computer Evidence Recovery Training. And I said, "Well, I don't know anything about computers, so how about a massive no?" And of course, he laughs and said, "Too late. I already put your name in for it." Well, that was to do computer forensics. So for folks, if you don't know what computer forensics is, that is drawing evidence off of computer media in a way that's not altered to be used in court. So along with that, along with the computers came the illegal pictures and videos, and it just kind of morphed from there. And then, yeah, I started chatting as a little girl online. And then when my name got out with the agency, they said, "Oh, Kevin seems to be the undercover guy. Let's send someone up to his office and teach him another part of the internet where he can chat as an adult." And that was dark and evil. So, and it just went from there.
Wow. What's interesting is I had Chris Hansen on my show multiple times years ago on the podcast. He's the one who was involved with the undercover and how they showed that on NBC and all that stuff. And it's just unreal to think about how dangerous it is for our kids online if they're not careful and they're really paying attention to who's really on that, who's really chatting with them or not.
Oh yeah, it's absolutely horrifying. And the problem with children is the fact that, they meet somebody for a minute and a half online and now we're lifelong friends. And once you open that door, then that's when bad stuff starts happening.
Well, you lived this life for a long time, 11 years, where you would go in and be these other personas, the little girl, and then the other one, which was a predator, right? Who would, on the adult level. And, you also had a private life. So how did you separate that life of twist and perversion with your family life? How did you work that out?
Well, I had a weird knack of once I got home, I could turn it off. But what helped me, well, what helped me and hurt me was the fact that I was an incredible workaholic. I mean, incredible. I would be in the office by 7 a.m. and sometimes I wouldn't leave until 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning. Shower, rinse, repeat. So by the time I got home in the evenings, most days I was completely exhausted.
Mhm.
Um, the majority of the days I'd fall asleep on the couch before dinner was even ready. And then my kids were older when I started doing this. When I first started doing this, my kids were already in high school. So that I think that saved me. And I think that saved me because if they would have been small, I couldn't have done it. But then I had grandkids, and that affected the relationship with my grandkids pretty severely.
Mm.
Wow.
Would you, do you think it was an addiction also in the fact
Oh
of
yeah,
workaholic? And it's interesting when you talk about workaholic versus you're working just because you're just so into this is the adrenaline, the thirst versus okay, I'm working to this because this is what I enjoy doing. What do you think it was both?
oh yeah. It was definitely both. In my mind, it was a game to me. Who is better at this? And I said I'm not better. I'm the best. So,
Hey,
and that
that's
was,
what we wish people will be like that today, because being the best, you got to really work hard to be the best.
yeah, yeah, you do. And so it was the thrill of the chase. It was the game. When you get up to that point where, you're not sure if they're going to meet or not, and then you throw out that one question and you're like, got them.
Wow.
Well, your investigations resulted in 60 convictions, right?
66.
66 convictions. Wow. And then, you go from that, you spend your whole career doing that. And then you go from that, you've been all over the world teaching and training in these kind of things. I mean, all over the world, like Detroit, Miami, Spain, Russia, Alaska, and the list goes on and on and on. It's rather extensive. Um, how did you transition? Was that an easy transition? Like, well, I've been doing that now. I'm just doing it on my own. To go from the Homeland Security to your KNS teaching and consulting.
Well, I really thought I would just expire at my desk. I figure I would work until my very last second. But there was a couple of things that happened in the last year of my career that took the wind out of my sails. And this is the first time that I've ever talked about this in person. This is going to take me a second. Um,
We're ready.
yeah, my wife passed away
Um,
pretty horrifically over a year before I retired. 2013, we spent more time in the hospital than we did at home. Um, and in the middle of that, I was still working. I was still doing undercover. Matter of fact, I had my undercover computer in the hospital room with me. So in between, she had cancer. So in between all the treatments and everything, I was still working like a fool. So once she passed away, that was it. That ruined me. After I went back to work, I popped online and tried to chat, and I sitting there crying my eyes out, and I said, that's it. I'm done. It's time to retire.
Oh, sorry to hear
wow.
that.
Yeah.
That's a very sad, painful experience. You know,
Yeah. Um, yeah, hindsight's always 2020. I should have stopped doing this 10 years before I did because you don't realize what vicarious trauma is doing to you until it's over. Matter of fact, well over 10 years before I did retire, I told my wife, I came home one day and I said, this is killing me. I said, I need to stop. So, I knew it was affecting me. But we talked about it and she's like, what else are you going to do? And I'm like, well, there's nothing else I want to do. So let's go. But, you know, the good part is I'm still here,
Yeah.
still here.
you are still here, and you've moved forward. You have this teaching consulting company, and you have written a book. It is called, it's rather a haunting title, Hunter of the Damned, A Walk Through Hell.
Hmm.
And when my friend was talking to me about you, she got the book and she read it, and she said it is a tough one to read. And so tell us. You said that's going to be your one and only book, and tell us about that book.
Well, interestingly enough, in high school, I was terrible at English. Matter of fact, it was probably my worst subject. So what do? I get a job in law enforcement where you're writing all the time, and then I write a book. But how the book came about, and I'm going to use one four-letter word here. And there's a saying in law enforcement called a shit magnet. So that's somebody who routinely gets calls that should be nothing, like a nuisance call, like a barking dog or something
Right.
like that. And they go and they get in a shootout with a homeowner, and a couple months later they go to a traffic accident, and they think they're going to write a ticket, and the trunk pops open and there's three dead people in there. Well, when it came to crimes against children, that was me. So early on in my career, people were like, Kevin, you get into some ridiculous stuff. You need to write a book when you retire. So
Hmm.
I was like, huh, okay, let me think about that. So that's how the book came about. So, but
Well,
yes, go ahead.
now I was going to say, tell us about, what is it in the message you're wanting people to get from it? It's your one and only book. You've already said, that's what she told me and why.
Yeah, this is a one and done. Well, the primary reason is my PTSD wouldn't let me write another book.
Hmm.
It was hard enough to get through this one. Matter of fact, the rough draft was done in 2018, and I had to step away for 3 years because when you're crying so hard you can't see the screen to type, I was like, oh, that's enough. Um, so I have plenty of material. I could write another book, but I wouldn't do that to myself. I wouldn't do that to myself. My mental health wouldn't sustain another book. Um, but why is the book written the way it is? It is absolutely a graphic read. It is a tough read, and that's what I tell people before they buy it. Why did I write it like that? Because the news doesn't give it justice. Let's face it, they have a minute or two, they breeze over it. The talking heads darn sure don't do it justice. And I said, if I'm going to write a book, it's going to be from the investigator standpoint. And I'm going to tell you how it is. It's going to be rude, it's going to be visceral, it's going to be shocking, but that's the way it is, folks. And I want people to realize when you hear a crime against the children, when they're talking about it on the news, it's not what you ever imagined. It's 100 times worse.
Hmm. Wow.
Yeah, like every parent and grandparent should read this book to understand exactly what's going on out there.
Yeah,
Um, yeah.
absolutely. Because this, the thing that I've realized since I started selling my book is people in my age group. I call them the ostrich group because they don't want to hear this. They don't want to know about it. But what gives me great hope is the younger generation, um, 45 and below, they are all about this. They're like, I want to know what's out there, and that gives me great hope.
Well, why do you think that the older generation just doesn't want to know about it? That
What?
they want to, just, put up their ears, cover their ears and see no evil, hear no evil.
Well, because shockingly, what I found doing these investigations is a lot of them, um, the family knows about it. There's a number of folks that I wrote about in my book, the predators in my book, the generations of family knew about this. And I'll talk about one. Winslow was the guy's last name, and he had put hands on all of his nieces and nephews, and then he was working on their kids, and they still the one in particular, and the little boy happened to be named Kevin of all things. Um, Winslow had arrested Kevin. Sorry, Winslow had molested Kevin's dad, and then his dad was still taking his son to Winslow's house for the weekend so he could watch him. And I'm like, what's happening, but people just, it was like it's just part of the family, so we just don't talk about that. And he's not the only one. That was relatively routine. There was another guy that we arrested who was 71, and I had written this in my affidavit that he was waiting for his great grandchild to come home from the hospital to put hands on them. And the judge read that, and I thought the judge's head was going to explode.
Oh my
Um,
gosh.
Wow. Yeah, it's a tough thing to wrap your head around, that stuff like this happens to children, and because for a lot of us, we don't understand it. And so, to walk through hell, like the subtitle of your book, you know, for so long, I get the PTSD part. I do. I mean, wow.
Hmm. And
Yeah.
I think that the hardest part is to relive it again. and write it again and have people ask you questions again and then relive it again.
Yeah, I go live on social media, and there's been two times now that I've had to step away from the camera because somebody said something that hit pretty deep, and the tears start flowing, and I'm like, all right, I need to take a breather here because that's the thing about PTSD. You never know when it's going to creep up on you.
Right. You don't
Uh,
know what triggers you. And then you wonder, why did it trigger you? What was
exactly.
that reason that I don't feel good anymore? And I felt good 2 seconds earlier. What happened? Why? And then you start being the person you don't, when you identify it, you start being the person that you don't want to be, or this is not who you are, but it became who you are
Yeah,
only when you're triggered.
that's 100% accurate because something who knows what it is in your brain, but then someone says something, you're like, that's not going to be good here for the next 10 or 15 minutes.
And it's so much craziness how that does that and how you respond to that. And you say, why did I respond that same way again?
Yeah, and that's the thing. It could be a song or just a random comment, and the yeah, and the comment you think back about what they said, and you're like, that wasn't really something that should have set me off, but yet it did.
Or it puts you in a total damper mood very fast,
Oh yeah, absolutely.
where you're
Yeah.
like, okay, I can't deal with this now. I gotta walk away. And that's hard.
Yeah, it is that.
Well, you took 66 people off the street, off the internet that were causing terrible things to the children. So I thank you for that. Thank you for doing what you did and hanging in there for so long. That was very admirable.
Yeah, I don't know if it's admirable or foolish, but I'll take admirable.
It's admirable. Not many people would do that, and to be able to do it for so long, it's like wow, wow. And then you write a book, and it's like when you write a book, it's not that you just write a book. You've got to go through the edits, and you got to go through the edits, and you got to go through the edits. So you have to keep reading that same stuff over and over again.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, that.
Over. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's why I said this. It's the one and done. It's yeah. And people ask me all the time, Kevin, you have plenty of material. Are you going to write another book? And I said, somebody could come in with $5 million cash, throw it on my island, and I would be like, no, no. My mental health is worth more than any money in the world because if you don't have your mental health, then what do you have? Being rich doesn't help you one bit.
That's right. That's right. And it's hard because I've worked with a lot of people who are experiencing or trying to come out of PTSD, and they struggle, but they want to get that out. And they'll say it's therapeutic, or one person said, I'm just going to bust unless I get the story out. So it can be, it's difficult, but for some people, they find therapy in writing a book when they've been through something so traumatic as that. Just it's like journaling. They'll tell you, journal. Well, the book is kind of a form of journaling. So I hope you found it therapeutic.
Oh no, I absolutely did. It was horrifying and therapeutic at the same time
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
when you tell people that you wonder if they understand because I said, well, it was just good to get it out,
Yeah.
and then people are like, well, it's still in your brain, but yeah, it's different. It's different.
That's right. It's like out there in the atmosphere now. You don't share that. They say, when you're traumatized, if you don't talk about it, it's like, you're closing the closet on mold and mildew, and it's just going to grow and grow. But when you get it out, there's a release or something, a relief. So
Oh, that's
yeah, I get that.
yeah, that's a great analogy. I'm stealing that from you. That's
Okay, you can do
that's
that.
that's no, no, that's actually a brilliant analogy because you you need people to hear what it's like, and even if they don't understand it, it's still good that you said it
Yes.
because
Yes.
yeah, because you're thinking about do people understand it or not, maybe I shouldn't say something, but and for whatever, and for the folks that's listening, it could be any PTSD. Get it out there. Don't hold it in. That's a terrible thing.
That's right. Don't keep it a secret. Those secrets do grow and fester, and it's not good. It ends up coming out somehow, somewhere down the line.
Yeah. Yes, exactly. And for a lot of time it comes out in a bad way. And that it just about happened to me. By probably within minutes. Something happened and the phone rang and that saved me. It's one phone call saved me from ending my life.
Wow.
Wow. Yeah.
Well, somebody was watching over you, Kevin,
Indeed.
for sure. Mm. Wow.
Mm.
Well,
So
how did
any
you
other questions, Sherry, you have? This is unreal. People definitely need to read the book so we don't
they
have
do?
him relive it again. I don't want them to have to go through that. Uh, what, Sherry, any questions?
I do. So, Kevin, how did they find out? How did they get your book? How did they find about your training and teaching? Which is just explain a little bit about your training and teaching so people know what you do. How do they find you and how they find out how they get your book?
Well, the teaching I don't do anymore. I do lectures on my
Okay.
book about my career. I used to teach. I don't do that anymore. I just do lectures on my book. If you want a copy of my book, you can get it right there. knsteaching.com. That's me. I ship the book. Just folks, just remember I'm a one-man business, so give me some time if I get a bunch of orders. But
Well,
yes,
there you go. Things could be
go to
worse, right? Marion,
exactly.
getting a bunch
Um,
of orders.
yeah, if you're looking for somebody to talk about uh, child exploitation, how it was from the beginning years, what it's like to work it, um, shoot me an email. If you want a copy of my book, like I said, it's knsteaching.com. And it's also available everywhere else.
Yeah, I've heard it's a good one.
Well, I can't tell you if it's good. An author shouldn't tell you if their book is good or not. I can tell you this: it's shocking. Um, Parts of my book will feel like a punch in the stomach after a big meal, and parts of my book will make you cry. But that's the nature
Oh,
of the beast.
wow.
Mm.
Yeah. Wow. Well, it was very, very interesting conversation. I mean, and it's very sad that we're going through this. And do you think this is going to continue forever? Are we going to have the right technology to keep this from stopping more quickly?
Now, this is a never ending story. And here's a good analogy that someone said many years ago, and this still holds true. Someone asked him during a presentation, are we having an effect? And he said, take a grain of sand and throw it in the ocean and hope that you're raising sea level. And the one thing I need to say, this is super important. This is one of the most understaffed and underfunded crime types. Wrap your head around that. This is one of the most understaffed and underfunded crime types.
Hmm.
Wow. It is. It's like another analogy. It's like taking a toothpick and chipping away at Stone Mountain, right?
Exactly. Yes.
Yeah. That's sad.
Mhm.
Mm. It's our
Absolutely.
future too. These kids are our future.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
All right. Well, fantastic. Go to storehousemediagroup.com to find information on Sherry, all things media and marketing. Appreciate it, guys.